Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing well. If you're watching on YouTube right now, make sure to like and subscribe. It does help quite a bit, and we appreciate it. And I do understand, but this isn't a guarantee. But I do understand you get good karma for liking and subscribing as well. So, want to say thank you for coming, everybody. I hope you're doing well. Hope you're healthy. Man, I just realized it's warm in this room. Let's get on with it. Good afternoon. Good evening, good morning, wherever you happen to be. Let's read this legal disclaimer. Today's demonstration is designed to instruct you on using MetaStock and the accompanying software plugins, and it is not a recommendation to buy or sell, but rather guidelines to interpreting and using specific indicators or features within the software. The information, software, and techniques presented today should only be used by investors who are aware of the risk inherent in trading, and MetaStock shall have no liability for any investment decisions based on the use of the software, any trading strategies, or any information provided in connection with the company. So I want to say welcome. Thanks, Manas, Corny, Itumaling. I'm sure I said that perfectly. Everybody, thanks for coming today. I hope you could hear me well. Let's talk a little bit about our guest. Our guest today is the only person that initially hired me at MetaStock. He's my old sales manager, a guy by the name of Kevin Nelson. I really like Kevin. I've worked with him. I think we worked together here in Salt Lake for a decade or two. I'm actually coming up on 25 years, Kevin. In March, it'll be 25 years, if you could believe that. But Kevin has always been such a really good teacher. He also does a really good job of kind of talking about MetaStock. He is no longer employed directly by MetaStock, but he runs a website called learnmetastock.com, which has like hundreds of videos on it. And he's going to talk to us today about creating a custom expert advisor. So, Kevin, that's what I'm going to do to introduce you. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. So my first question is if you've been there 25 years, that means I hired you, what, you were about 5 years old or 6 years old? How old were you?
Well, nobody's going to buy that I'm 28 because, you know. Anyway, actually, you're going to get me started on a story, but what I really want to do is just get out of the way.
We're good with that. We're good with that.
All right, thanks, Kev.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. I'm just going to go ahead and take over if that's okay. And
yeah, let's go ahead and get this screen over to you. I almost forgot that part. Yes. Okay, here it comes.
All right. Very good. Tell me if you can see my screen, okay?
And it just came in. Yes.
Perfect. All right, great. Well, welcome, everyone, and thank you very much for coming to our class tonight. As Jeff said, my name is Kevin Nelson. And what I'm going to be doing tonight is I'm going to be talking about the expert advisor. But first of all, let me give you just a quick background on myself. I started with MetaStock back in the early 90s. And in 2008, I left the company to start a training company, which we call learnmetastock.com. And at learnmetastock.com, the only thing we do is we try to help you with your program and any of the additional add-ons as well, to hope that you get the most that you can out of the program, and whatever it is that you want to get out of the program, we're there to help you with it. So we can help you in a lot of different ways, but I'll tell you a little bit more about what we offer and so forth at the end of today's presentation. So what I'd really like to do is I'd just like to go ahead and just jump straight into what we're going to be talking about here tonight. And tonight we're going to create a custom expert advisor. And this is my favorite way to actually teach the power tools, and that is creating something from the ground up and actually showing you how everything's kind of put together. So I think this is a pretty good example of how the expert advisor can really help you with your trading. So my game plan tonight, what we're going to do here for creating an expert advisor is we're going to first decide on the different types of indicators that we want to use with this particular expert. And then we're going to create a game plan of how we want to display them. And then finally, we'll go ahead and create our expert. Now, I'm going to do this in 3 major steps here. And the system that we're going to be using is we first want to identify a trend. I always recommend, especially for newer traders, I get a lot of questions about, what's the best, the best way to look at the markets and so forth. And one thing I always come back to is try to identify what the overall trend is, whether the trend is up, down, sideways, whatever the case may be. But it's important that you understand exactly what the trend is. And from there, then you can decide whether you want to trade with the trend, you want to be a counter trend trader and so forth. But extremely important that you identify that. Secondly, what we'll do is we'll use another indicator to help identify or confirm that trend. And thirdly, we'll use a third indicator to help kind of pinpoint our entries and exits. And so the game plan here is that once we identify the trend, we'll look for good buying and selling opportunities by looking for retracements into that overall trend. So to identify the trend, we can do this a lot of different ways, but hands down, the easiest and most common way to identify a trend is using a moving average. And this by far is the most common and the most widely used in technical analysis. So that's what we'll do. We'll use a moving average, and then what we'll do to display what the moving average is doing is we'll display it as what's called a ribbon, and I'll show you where that is here in just a second. So let's go ahead and jump over here now to the program here. And the first thing I want to do inside our program is I just want to load a basic chart. And the chart I'm going to use tonight is a chart of the SPY. The symbol is SPY, which is an ETF for the S&P 500. So let's go ahead and load that chart. We'll take a look at that. Now, the first thing I want to do here is I want to plot just a moving average here on our chart. So to do that, from our indicator quick list up here at the very top, I'm just going to scroll down and alphabetically look for the moving average, and I'm going to drag it directly on top of our price bars here. And we'll go ahead and plot our first moving average. And I want to plot a 50 period, and I'm going to make it a simple calculation. And I'm also going to change the color of it here to maybe like blue. And I'll make the line a little bit heavier by choosing a little bit heavier weight and click on OK. So this blue line now is, as you can see, if I hover directly over it, you'll see it's a 50 period simple moving average at the closing price. Now, to identify a trend, this is a whole, a whole other area that we could actually spend some time on, but we're going to try to keep it really simple tonight. And what we're going to do to identify the trend is we're just going to look at the closing price in relation to the moving average. And if the closing price is above the moving average, we're going to call that bullish. And if the closing price drops down below that moving average, we're going to call that bearish. And as you might imagine, with any type of analysis, any type of formulas and so forth that you create, there's always going to be pluses and minuses, but pros and cons to it. But what I want to do is I do want to try to keep it as simple as possible. So first thing I'm going to do is we're going to create an expert advisor again from scratch. And to load the expert advisor, I'm going to click on this little guy up here at the very top, the guy with a hat on here. And we're going to click on the new button over here on the right-hand side. And we're going to give it a name. Now, whenever I create a formula or an expert or a system test or an exploration, I typically will use a wildcard at the very beginning of it. And I usually use an exclamation point. And the reason being is that if you don't put some type of wildcard, I guess, in the front of it, they get sorted alphabetically. And some of these lists are pretty big, and it's really easy to kind of lose track of the different systems that you've created. So if you use a common, wild card, like in my case, an exclamation point, all of my systems will all be grouped together. It's really easy to kind of find them. So for this one, we're just going to call this our expert class. So I'll go ahead and just give this a name of expert class. And then I'm going to jump over here to the trends tab up here at the very top. The trends tab is what's going to help us with what's called the ribbon. And the ribbon is what we're going to use to identify overall trends. And the way that we're going to identify this again is if the closing price is above the moving average, we're going to call that bullish. And if it drops down below it, we're going to call it bearish. So hang on for just one second. All right, so to get started, here's where the MetaStock's formula language actually comes into play. To really get the most out of the MetaStock program, you're going to have to at least get a basic understanding of the formula and the formula writing capability that the program has. And there's a number of different ways to do that, but at Learn MetaStock, we actually have a lot of different training videos just on formula writing to help you with that. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and write the formulas here, and I'll explain as we're going through it. So to identify the closing price of a security, you just identify that with the word close. And what I want to identify is if the close is above a moving average. So the identifier that we're going to use to identify if it's above or below, for example, if it's above, we're going to use a greater than sign. And then for the formula for the moving average, There's a couple different ways you can do it, but an easy way to access the formulas inside the MetaStock program when you're inside the Power Tools is you click on this Functions button, and you'll find that this is located in the different Power Tools of the program. But this is going to open up a formula writing section where you can have access to all the different types of formulas that are available here. And as you'll see, this is a huge list. So over here on the left-hand side, you'll see these are the different categories that we have to work with. But let's say, for example, again, I want to use a moving average, but I don't know where that would be. For example, I don't know what category that would be in. So what I could do is I could click over here on the right-hand side, and then I could sort or basically drag the little scroll bar down. Or what I could also do is that once I've selected something over here, I can just start typing what I'm interested in, which in this case would be like MOV for moving average. And that'll jump me down to the moving average formulas here. And from here, you'll see that we've got some different choices, but down here underneath this window here, which is the format, this will give us a hint of how this formula is actually going to be written. And in this case, this is exactly the one that I'm looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And then what's important is down here at the bottom, I want to make sure and have a check mark in both of these boxes. So when I click on OK, what that'll do is that'll paste it right in there for me, and it'll give me a hint of exactly how to write this formula. So for this, I want to identify the moving average. The first thing that it's asking for is the data array, meaning what do we want to create the moving average of? And in this case, I want to do a moving average of the closing price. So I'll replace data array with the word close. For the periods, I'm going to replace that with the number 50. And then these are the different types of moving averages. Each one represents a different type, like E is exponential, S is simple, T is time series, and so forth. But the one that I want is just a simple. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all this, and I'm just going to put the letter S. So that right there is a 50-period simple moving average of the closing price. So our first formula is just saying that the close is greater than its 50-period moving average. Now, what I can do is that if I feel confident that this formula is correct, I can make a copy of this, for example, and then I could go down to this lower section, which is the bearish part of this formula here, and then just paste that in. And then all I'm going to do is just change that greater than sign to a less than sign. So now I've got the close is greater than its moving average to be bullish, and I got the close less than the moving average to be bearish. And then to control what that ribbon's going to look like, click on the ribbon button over here on the right-hand side, and this will open up a dialog that allow you to control, first of all, whether or not you want to see a ribbon. Second of all, whether or not you want to see any vertical lines. And then you can control whether it's going to be in the inner window or all inner windows and so forth. But in this case, I'm going to unselect the vertical lines. I just want to see the ribbon by itself. I'll click on OK, and then click on OK. And then lastly, we'll click on the attach button down here at the bottom and close down this dialog. And then that'll plot our ribbon down here at the very bottom here. So as you can see here, that when our formula is true, our ribbon is green and colored and labeled bullish. And then vice versa, if I scroll back here in time here a little bit, when our bearish formula is true, our ribbon is red and colored and labeled bearish. Now, the other thing you can do here too is that if you hold down your left mouse button, you can drag this ribbon around and you can place it on different sections of your chart, make it look however you want. But the important thing at this time is you want to make sure that this is doing exactly what you want it to be doing. So here's where I'd recommend you take something like the crosshairs over here on the left-hand side, and then very carefully look at the price bars and make sure that right here where it went from green to red, that closing price right there, for example, was below that moving average. And then vice versa, we can really kind of zoom in here on a little section of our chart here as well, is that when it goes from red to green, again, that closing price right there goes from below that moving average to above it. And once we're confident that that actually is working correctly, then of course, then we can kind of move on from there. So I'll go ahead and zoom out here a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drag this ribbon back down to the very bottom of our chart. And I'll click on the little arrow to get rid of that click on the crosshairs right there, and that'll get rid of that. And then of course, then we can move on here. All right, so the next thing I want to do in this is we're going to identify or confirm the trend. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use a swing indicator. And if you've been in technical analysis for a while, you know that there's a lot of different types of swing indicators, but we're going to use probably the most common one, which is the MACD. The MACD is just an average, or just 3 different moving averages, really easy to interpret, and very well known, very again, easy to spot, for example, bullish and bearish areas. And what we'll do then is to identify this MACD is we'll color code the price bars when it's either bullish or bearish. So let's go ahead and jump back over here to the chart here. And I'm going to grab the MACD again. And again, I'm going to scroll down here, find the MACD in our list. And this time I'll drag it up here to the very top of our chart here, and we'll plot it in its own inner window. I'll click on OK, and we'll just use the default parameters here. Now, there's a number of different ways that you can interpret the MACD, but hands down, the most basic way to look at it, and the way most people are taught when they're first learning how to use it, is they're looking at the MACD itself, which is the solid line, and looking at the dotted line and identifying where these 2 lines are crossing each other. So for example, like where this line is going up above the dotted line, that's where most people look to actually purchase or basically go long at something like that. And vice versa, to when that solid line goes down below the dotted line, a lot of people look at that as a sell signal, or possibly go bear, or possibly get short on a security, you know, if they're selling the security short at that time. But as you can see here, what happens here with the MACD is the MACD does a really nice job of kind of identifying what the trends are. So using this in combination with other indicators actually can be a pretty good way to put these together. So what I'm going to do for this situation is we're going to identify that when the solid line or the MACD itself is above the dotted line or its trigger line, we're going to call that bullish. And then vice versa, when it crosses down and is below its trigger line, we're going to call that bearish. And the way that we're going to identify those areas is we're going to color code these price bars to be either green or red. So to add that to our expert, I'm going to go back into our expert advisor here, and we'll open it back up. I'll just double click on it this time, and I'll click on the highlights tab this time. And the highlights is what gives you the controls of, or allows you to color code your price bars accordingly. So we're going to create 2 different highlights here. I'll click on the new button over here on the right hand side. And the first one is, we'll just give it a name, for example, of like bullish MACD, for example. And when that happens, let's go ahead and color code those price bars to be green. So I'll choose green over here. And then our condition is we want to identify, again, when that solid line's above the dotted line. Now, to write that formula, again, if you're newer to the program and the formulas and so forth, you can always access these formulas through the functions button. But what we're going to do here is I'm going to kind of speed you through this here a little bit, and I'm just going to go ahead and write it. And so for this one, for example, to identify the value of this solid line, the way that this is written, it's just written as MACD, how's that? And then open and close parentheses. And by writing it like that, what that's going to do is that's going to identify or tell me what the value of that solid line is right there. Now, the value of this dotted line, this is actually a 9-period exponential moving average of the solid line. So to write that, I'll go ahead and jump down here a little bit, and we're going to write again the moving average, which is just MOV, open parenthesis. And the first thing that the moving average wants to know is what is the data rate that we want to use, meaning what do we want to create a moving average of? In this case, I want to do a moving average of that MACD. So our data rate is going to be MACD, open and close parentheses, followed by a comma, and then however many periods we want to use, which in this case is going to be 9, followed by a comma, and then followed by the type of moving average, which I'm going to use as E, which is representative of exponential. So in other words, this next line right here is a 9-period exponential moving average of the MACD, or in other words, it's the value of this dotted line. Okay, so now what I want to know is I want to identify when that solid line's above that dotted line. So to do that, all I'm going to do is just say the MACD is greater than its moving average. And so that formula right there will identify when that particular situation occurs. So to check it, I'll go ahead and click on OK. And we'll click on OK. and we'll apply it to our chart and we'll see what that looks like. So as you can see here on our chart, I don't know how well you can see this, but this will be a little bit more visible when we do the red bars, but you'll see that if you look closely here, I'll kind of zoom in here. We'll grab this little section right here, is that these price bars right here have changed color to green. And you'll see that exactly when they went from black to green is when that solid line went above that dotted line. And when it did, those price bars are then green, and they stay green until that solid line drops down below that dotted line. So that part right there, that's again what we want to do, is we want to look really closely at it to make sure that it's working correctly. And once that's working correctly, then we can do it for the other side as well. So let's go back into our expert here. I'll open it back up. And this time, I'm just going to grab this formula here that we just made here a second ago. I'll make a copy of it. I'll click on cancel, and I'm going to go to the new tab, and we're going to create a bearish MACD. So I'll give this a name of bearish MACD, and we'll color code this one to be red, for example. And then I'll go ahead and paste in that same condition. And now the only change I need to make here is I just need to change that greater than sign to a less than sign. So now this is identifying where the MACD or the solid line is below that dotted line. So we'll click on OK, and again, click on OK, and close this down. And now you'll see we've got price bars that are red in color. And again, we want to make sure that they turn red when that red or the solid line is below the dotted line. And you'll see that they stay red all the way up until they go back up. And then again, those price bars are now turning green. So that's a second part of our equation. Now we're going to take this one step further. And what we're going to do is we're going to use another indicator to help identify retracements into these trends. And again, a lot of different types of oscillators that we could use, but a really common and easy one to interpret is the stochastic oscillator. So for this one, we're going to use the stochastic to give us those buy and exit signals, and we're going to plot buy and sell arrows directly on the chart. So to do that, we'll go back in again into our expert here, and I'll open it back up. And this time I'm going to go to the tab up here at the top, which is called symbols. And this will help identify or give us the ability to give us, for example, buy and sell arrows or notes on our chart and so forth. But to do this, we'll click on the new button over here on the right-hand side. And for this one, I'll call this stochastic buy signal. And the condition, now this time what I want to do is I want to identify where the stochastic is crossing up. So let me just stop here for just a second. And what I want to do is I actually want to plot the stochastic here. So it's asking if I want to save the changes. I'll say yes. And I think it probably demonstrate better if I plot the stochastic before we go any further. So again, from our drop-down list, I'll just scroll down. I'll find the stochastic oscillator, and we'll drag it into a new inner window. And what I'm going to do for the stochastic is I'm going to keep the default parameters here at 533. So we'll click on OK, and we'll go ahead and plot this here. So let me go ahead and drag this up here so we can see this. Okay. So with the stochastic now, the stochastic is similar in a certain degree to the MACD indicator itself. You'll see it's actually made up of two different lines. The solid line is the stochastic itself, and then the dotted line is the trigger line or the signal line. And again, the way that that this particular indicator is interpreted actually can be done in a lot of different ways. And the most common way that most people are taught how to use the stochastic oscillator is looking for extreme levels, meaning that when the indicator itself, for example, or in this case, the stochastic goes down below an extreme level, that's considered to be an oversold situation. And a lot of times when that happens, the prices might reverse and then move upward. And then vice versa, when the indicator reaches an up or an extreme high level, a lot of time that's considered to be an overbought situation. And a lot of times the prices will reverse from there and start to move down. But the stochastic's a pretty interesting indicator because, again, like the MACD, it can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. We can look for situations where it's either, overbought or oversold. We can actually look for patterns in it as well, meaning that we can look for higher highs or lower highs in the indicator in relation to the chart itself to help identify maybe if we're uncovering some type of hidden divergences and support and resistance and so forth. Then in addition to that is actually we can also look at this for possible crossing points. And that's what we're going to do here tonight. Again, we're going to just try to keep it really simple. And what we're going to do is we're going to just look for where the stochastic is crossing the dotted line, meaning that if the solid line goes above the dotted line, we're going to call that a bullish signal. And if it crosses down below that dotted line, we're going to call that a bearish signal. And to actually make it just even a little bit simpler, we're also going to ignore whether or not it's in an extreme level or not. We're only going to look to see if those two lines are crossing each other. So let's go back into our expert here, and I'll open that back up, and I'll click on the new, or I'll go ahead and select this stochastic buy signal, the one that I just started here. Now, for this particular example, instead of just looking to identify if one line is above or below the other, what I'm looking for this time is I'm looking for very specific crossing points. I want to identify where that solid line crosses up above that dotted line right there. So there's another formula that is really handy to learn, you know, when you're learning how to work with the different formulas inside of MetaStock. Again, I'll teach a lot of different types of formulas, but what I do find myself doing is coming back to a handful of formulas that I tend to use over and over again. And one of the formulas that I use a lot, and I think it's a really good one to learn how to use, is what's called the cross function. Because the cross function will help you identify where two different things are crossing each other. Whether in this case, for example, the stochastic is crossing up above the dotted line, or maybe the security itself is crossing a moving average or a particular price point. I mean, it's pretty much limitless what you could identify as far as crossing. But the way that you write the cross function, it's written as cross, open parenthesis, and then followed by data array number 1, followed by a comma, and then data array number 2. And whatever is crossing up, for example, like in this case, if we were to identify where the solid line is crossing up above the dotted line, we'd want to put the value of the solid line in the place of data array number 1. And whatever it's crossing up above, we put in the place of data array number 2. So in this case, that would be the dotted line. So to identify what those particular formulas are, this solid line right here is the stochastic formula. So the stochastic is written as stochastic, or S-T-O-C-H, open parenthesis, and then the time periods that it uses. So if you just want to use the default parameters of when you plot the stochastic oscillator, hang on for just 1 second. You just go ahead and just plug in the numbers of 5 and 3, and that is, again, like I say, the default for the stochastic. So this formula right here, stochastic 5, 3, will give us the value of the solid red line. Now the dotted line, kind of like the MACD, is a moving average of the solid line. But the difference is that this dotted line is a 3-period simple moving average of the stochastic. So to write that formula would be written as an MOV for moving average, the data array, which in this case is going to be the stochastic. So I'll go ahead and plug that in, followed by a comma, the number of periods that we want to use for the moving average, which is going to be 3, followed by the type of moving average, which is going to be the letter S, which is going to be an abbreviation for simple. So I know that, you know, as I'm going through this is, you know, for a lot of people that are new to the program and so forth, this is probably seems like a lot of information. And again, this is a pretty advanced topic. And believe me, we can, at Learn MetaStock, we definitely teach a lot of the basics, and we can get you up to speed here. But in this particular class, I just really want to show you some of the different capabilities that you have with the program. So again, if you're brand new to MetaStock and I'm showing you all these different formulas and you're confused about it, I totally understand, but just kind of bear with me here, and hopefully you'll see the power and the different things that we can do with this. All right, so here's what we've identified. Now, this formula right here is the value of the red solid line. This formula right here is the value of the dotted line. So what I want to do is I want to take this first formula and I want to put it in the place of data array number 1. So I'll paste it right in there, and then I'll take this formula right here, and I want to place it in the place of data array number 2. And by doing this, this will identify where, again, that solid line is crossing up above that dotted line. Now, to control what that's going to look like, inside this editor, if you click on the graphic tab up here at the very top, you can click on this drop-down list and you can choose what you want to see plotted on your chart when that formula gets triggered. So in this particular case, I just want to use an upward pointing buy arrow. We'll make the size of it large, and then I'll color code it, for example, to be green. And we'll place it below the price plot like this. And we'll also put, if we want to put a label on it, we could also have that plotted below the symbol. And over here on the right-hand side, this will just give you an idea of what that's going to look like. So I'll click on OK. And let's take a quick look and see what happens here. We'll click on OK and click on Close. And you'll see that we've got quite a few arrows here on our chart here. And what we want to do at this point is we want to make sure that these things are giving us an actual arrow where these two lines are crossing in this situation. So right here where that solid line is going above the dotted line, you'll see I've got that green arrow. You'll see I've got one right there. You'll see I've got one right there. So that's perfect. It looks like it's lining up really well. And so now once I have it in this format, now I know that I can continue on, and I can do the same thing for the bearish side of this as well. So once I've got my bullish signals here on my chart, I want to go ahead and put in bearish signals here where the solid line is crossing down below that dotted line. So we'll go back into our expert here again. I'll open it back up. And this time I'm going to go into the formula that we just created, make a copy of it. And again, I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of here. We'll click on the new button over here on the right-hand side, and we're going to call this a stochastic sell signal. And I'll paste in that same formula. But this time, the difference is I need to identify where the solid line is crossing down below that dotted line. So in order to identify that using this formula here, I need to reverse these data arrays. I need to put the moving average first, followed by the stochastic second. And by doing that, that'll identify the exact opposite of our buy signals. So I'll go ahead and just make a copy of this right here. I'll put the moving average first, followed by a comma, and then I'll paste in that formula and then get rid of that last comma there. All right. And by the way, just real quick, watch what happens here, by the way, if I make a mistake. If I go ahead and remove, for example, like that last parenthesis and I click on OK, what will happen is the program's also going to come back and say, hey, there's a mistake. And in this case, it tells us right there, an end of function parenthesis is actually expected. So we'll click on OK. And it even puts my cursor right there to kind of help me figure out where the problem might be there as well. So, and a lot of times that's what will happen is that when you write something, if it's not correct and you try to close out of it, the window basically will come back and tell you that, hey, there's a problem with this and you need to address it before you can move on. But at that point, once you've got it this way, and if you can click somewhere else, and then if the window goes away, then you know that you've at least got it in a format that the program can understand. So for the sell signal, I'll go ahead and click on the drop down here. And this time I'll choose a downward pointing sell arrow. We'll make the size large and we'll color code this one to be red. But this time I want the symbol above the price plot. So I'll put the radio button up there. And again, same thing. If I was to put a label in it, then I might put the radio button in above the symbol. So it looks like this over here on the right-hand side. We'll click on OK. And now you'll see we've got a stochastic sell signal in here as well. So let's go ahead and plot that and see how that looks. So I'll click on OK. And again, click on Close. And now we've got a lot of sell signals here on our chart. And again, same thing. What I want to do is I want to grab these crosshairs and I want to make sure that wherever I get that downward pointing arrow, that solid line is crossing down below that dotted line. So it's crossing down right there. It's crossing down right there. And sometimes it's kind of hard to line up exactly where that crossing point is, but sometimes it'll be a little bit easier to find the more obvious ones. And if you find the more obvious ones, that might help, give you a little bit more confidence in some of the ones that are a little bit harder to read there. But as I can see here on the chart, it looks like everything's working correctly. So again, we can move on from here. Now, once I kind of have it in this format, then what I want to do is I want to combine these three different items together, meaning I want to look for the trend. Number two, I want to make sure our swing indicator is in the same direction. And then finally, I want to look for a retracement in order to buy or sell into that overall trend. In other words, I want to buy or sell at a good price. So to do that, I'm going to combine these three different items here that we've got going on here. Down here at the very bottom is our ribbon, and this is identifying what the prices are doing in relation to our moving average. Then we've got our prices changing color, which are based on the MACD, whether the MACD is above or below its signal line. And then lastly, we've got these arrows, which are plotted because the stochastic is crossing up or down above or below its dotted line or signal line as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine them all together, meaning what I'm looking for is I only want to get a buy signal if I'm in a confirmed uptrend, and I want to ignore the sell signals. And then vice versa, when the market's dropping, then I want to look for sell signals and ignore the buy signals. So to do that, we'll basically have the expert take that all or put it all together. We'll go back into our expert here again. I'll open it back up. And now the nice thing is that if I've written these different formulas and they're all working correctly, I can literally just copy and paste them and put them into one place. And by doing that, I can combine them all together. So the first one I'm going to do is this one is identifying the ribbon down here at the bottom to be either bullish or bearish. So our bullish condition is the close is above its moving average. So what I'll do is I'll just make a copy of that formula. And I'm going to jump over now to the symbols tab, and I'm going to go to the stochastic buy here, and I'm going to change the name from stochastic buy, and I'm going to change it to maybe like combo buy, because now this is going to be a combination of three different systems or indicators put together. And I'll put some spaces here, and again, I'll go ahead and paste that in. And that, as you can see now, we've got two different criteria here. Criteria number one is the closing price is above its moving average. And criteria number two is that the stochastic is crossing up above its moving average. Now, the problem at this point is that if I click on OK, this message here is saying, I don't understand what you're trying to do here, because we're asking the program two different things here, and it wants to know how we possibly want to combine these, if we want to make them inclusive or exclusive or whatever the case may be. But in this case, I want to make sure that both of these are true. And the way that I'm going to combine them together is I'm going to put the word "and" at the very end. So this is identifying now that the close is above its moving average and the stochastic is crossing up above its moving average. So I'll click on OK. And then what I want to do now is I want to add this part to it here as well, the MACD, and then again the stochastic. So now I'm going to go to the highlights tab, and I'm going to grab the formula for the MACD here that we created before and do the same thing. So I'm going to make a copy of that. I'll cancel out of here and go to the symbols tab, and I'll open that up. And now I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. And again, same thing. I'll put the word "and" at the very end. And so now I've got three different criteria here at the very end of this. You'll see that it's identifying that the close is above its moving average and the MACD is above its moving average and the stochastic is crossing up above its moving average. Okay, so let's go ahead and try that. We'll click on OK, and again, click on close. And now what'll happen here, as you will go back here to like a bearish section right here. For example, like this was back in March and April, or February and April, back in February and March, back in 2020, when we had, of course, had our big sell-off. But now you'll see all those buy signals. I don't have any buy signals here in this big drop-off here. And in fact, I don't start to get buy signals again until I get above that moving average. And again, three things have to happen. The closing price has to be above the moving average. The MACD has to be above its trigger line. And then we're looking for a retracement into that. So now to update that for the sell signals, we'll do the same thing. We'll go back into the expert here again, and I'm going to grab the formulas from these different sections, and again, we'll combine them all together. So from the trends tab, I'll make a copy of the bearish formula this time, And this is identifying where the close is below its moving average. I'll go to my symbols tab and I'll open up the sell signal that we created before. And I'm going to call this a combo sell signal. And again, I'll paste this in here. Paste that formula in, and to combine these two together, I'll use the word and. So again, these two conditions now have to be true. The close has to be less than its moving average, and the stochastic has to cross down. So we'll click on OK. And again, if that window goes away, I know that I've at least written it into a form that the program can understand. All right. So then I'll go to my highlights tab, and I'll grab the formula for the bearish MACD, make a copy of that. And again, cancel out of here and go back to the symbols tab and plug that in as well. Okay. And again, I'll put the word and here. So now we've got our three conditions for our sell condition. And that is, again, the close is below its moving average and the MACD is below its moving average. And finally, the stochastic is crossing down. So we'll click on OK. OK. And again, click on close. And now you'll see we're only getting sell signals in a downward movement. Everywhere that the market's moving up, we don't see any sell signals. And again, we only get them in a confirmed downtrend. And for a confirmed downtrend, the prices have to be below that moving average. The MACD has to be below its trigger line. And then again, the stochastic has to be crossing down. So there's some pretty good examples here on this chart here of identifying, for example, like where the prices are moving up, we get a little bit of a retracement and then they go long, and then vice versa for the sell signals. Again, the prices are moving down, we get a little bit of a retracement and the prices move down again. So this is just one idea of how you can combine a number of different indicators together to give you a combined, or basically what I consider kind of a composite signal there of combining a lot of different indicators together. But this is just one example, and as you might imagine, there's countless combinations that you could possibly come up with on your own. But that's what we do at Learn MetaStock, is we help you get up to speed with the program. And again, tonight's presentation was really a pretty advanced subject, but we have ways to kind of get you started literally from just installation all the way up through advanced formula writing. And the way that we do that is that if you go up to the Learn MetaStock website, and you click around on some of these different tabs, you'll kind of be able to follow along with what I'm talking about here. But the way that we do that, for example, is we do up to 3 live classes per week. And during these 3 live classes, when you sign up or basically become a member, you just log into the site. And at that time, you click on this join live class. And then, of course, come into the classroom at that time. And the nice thing about that is that if you have any questions or anything else like that, then we can help you at that point. And the other thing that we've been doing and during our live classes, like for example, like today we did an Explorer class. And at the end of the class, of each class, we open it up for general questions. So if you are in the Explorer class, but maybe you have a question about a system test or something like that, just stick around to the end of the class when we open it up, and then you can ask whatever type of questions that you want. Now, primarily where most people spend the time on the Learn MetaStock website is inside this video library. And one of the more commonly asked questions I get is that most of our customers, I'm here in the US, but most of our customers are actually international. And our time frames for the live classes a lot of times really aren't convenient. So what we do is we also record our live classes and we place them up on the website. So if you miss a live class, we'll place them underneath this section here. And in addition to that, well, if you scroll down a little bit further than that, you'll find that we divide our classes up into a lot of different sections. So if you're just getting started with technical analysis, you might want to take a look at these first 2 classes that we have here. And then if you're brand new to MetaStock, I recommend that you start off with any of these classes. And typically it's best to start at the top and start working your way down. But once you get through, for example, like the first 4 classes, then you can jump around to just about any other section that you want. And on this site here, we have well over 100 different training videos now on just about every type of subject that you can imagine. So here's a section on the expert advisor, option scope, system testing. I think system testing is also one that we could do probably double this, double the number of classes here, because there's just so many different things we can do with that. But one of my favorites is actually working with the Explorer. I think the Explorer is probably one of the more versatile tools inside the MetaStock program. And the capabilities of this, I think, also are pretty much unlimited in what you want to do. But what the Explorer allows you to do is it allows you to go out and search or scan literally through thousands of securities at a time and find those securities that are giving you the setups that you're looking for. So again, I think this is a really powerful tool and well worth your time spending time and effort learning that one. But as I was saying before, we have a number of formula writing classes to help you out, literally from formula writing 1 all the way up. And then we'll scroll down here. We have a number of videos on the RMO, using stops inside the system tests. This is, again, another kind of important area, if you ask me as well, is that a lot of people spend so much time looking for that perfect setup, that perfect buying opportunity. A lot of times they don't spend a lot of time figuring out where they're going to get out of a trade. And so this is an area where we kind of help with that as well. And then in addition to that, we have a number of videos on the different indicators. And probably one of the more popular areas that we have on our website is what we call our trading strategy section. And in this one, what we do is we'll take a published trading strategy that's either in a book or magazine. And first of all, we'll explain the strategy. But number 2, more importantly, is we'll show you how to duplicate it inside your MetaStock program. And what's really nice about that is that whenever we do something along those lines, we always create formulas for you that you can then download directly into your program. So for example, like this particular video or this training class was called the short-term gap trading. And to understand it, of course, you'll want to watch the video. But number 2, over here on the right-hand side, you can click on this download button, and this will download the formulas directly into your MetaStock program. So basically at Learn MetaStock, what we can do is we can save you a massive amount of time and effort and help you get up to speed and help you get whatever it is that you really want to get out of your MetaStock program. So that's what I have for you here tonight. Are there any questions or anything that I can help anyone with? And if you do, just send me a message there in the chat window. I'll be more than happy to help you. But other than that, I'll go ahead and turn the time back over to Jeff and let him take over from here.
There is a bit of a question coming in on YouTube that I'm not sure. I'll just ask you if you have any general advice around this. This is from Corny.
Okay.
And he's like, do you have any advice for how we counteract sideways movements that are formed? The reason for this question is because moving averages during sideways periods do not give technical indications that could be relied on.
Well, that's a great question. I mean, when looking at a market, I mean, we know that markets, tend to trend up, they trend down, and they also get caught in like sideways or consolidation, what we call consolidations, trading ranges, whatever you want to call it. But when a market gets caught sideways, for example, we're in a trading range, that actually is an opportunity for you as well. And a lot of times, the way that a lot of people look at that is they'll identify where the support and resistance possibly is during that trading range. Because a lot of times what will happen is that when a market has been moving for a while and then it consolidates, and this is really common when you're trying to use a moving average where the prices are just moving up and up and down on the moving average, and you're getting in late, you're getting out late, and so forth. But if you can identify possibly where the support and resistance is and be patient and then wait for the prices to move from that point, a lot of times those are some really good trading opportunities. But that is, just like with any type of indicator, a moving average, has its strengths and weaknesses. And one of the weaknesses of a moving average is exactly what you're asking. And that is when the markets tend to get caught in these trading ranges, moving averages, tend to produce what we call whipsaws. You're getting in, getting out late, and so forth. But if you understand that, then you can also use it to your advantage if you know how to work with it from there.
Okay, that's a good answer. Let me go ahead and I'm actually going to take over, if you don't mind. And we're just going to kind of give people like a little bit of a special offer to kind of get started today. I want you guys to know that when Kevin's really well aware of this, but actually we just brought on a new sales rep here at MetaStock. And a couple of new support reps over the last couple of months. And one of the things that we actually use, because it's such a great resource to get people up to speed with MetaStock, is we actually have them go through videos at learnmetastock.com. And it's very, very helpful because, you know, obviously, like if you're starting here at MetaStock, you need to pull in a lot of information very, very rapidly. And Kevin, I really appreciate you putting all those videos together. It certainly has made my job quite a bit easier in terms of getting people up to speed with MetaStock here in the company. So it's actually a resource we actually use internally, and it's extremely valuable. I love, I think it's great, kind of everything that's available on it for you. And Kevin showed it all to you, but as part of it, you get like hundreds of instructional videos. You get videos on MetaStock, the expert advisor, the system tester, the stops, all kinds of just really, really good videos. One of the things that I actually have always been a really big fan of is the formula downloads that are available. Kevin has will do one of the things that he'll do regularly is go and maybe he'll get like an article from Stocks and Commodities and that talks about a new methodology, and he'll do a little class on it, but he'll also make all of the formulas available as a download that's free on the site. I just think it's such a great value. And, you know, with MetaStock, one of the things that I love about it is the fact that it's such a big tool. And like any other toolbox, the better you understand how to use that screwdriver or that power drill or whatever it might be, the better it's actually going to work for you. And so I think if you're new to MetaStock, this is something that you should absolutely do. And even if you're experienced and just want to learn more about how those tools work, it's something you should absolutely do as well. So the pricing on learnmetastock.com is available as a subscription. It's only $99 per month. And if you're new to the service, we're going to do what we call a new customer special. And what that is basically we're going to let you sign up. We're going to give you $99. So you'll basically pay for your first month, but we'll give you the second month and the third month for free, which means you're basically paying about $33 per month for the service for that initial trial period. I'd recommend you try it. When we train our own staff how to use MetaStock using learnmetastock.com. And I think that's actually quite telling. It's a really, really good service. So you can call us. We can help you get set up for that right now. It's 800-882-3040. You can also do it online at metastock.com/learnmetastock 3-for-1. And you can also go to metastock.com/sales chat if you want to kind of chat with one of our sales reps. And if you talk to Ellis, welcome him to the team. He's brand new. And he just went through learnmetastock.com. So in any case, I want to say thanks for Kevin. That was really, really good. Thanks for coming and doing it with us today. For all of you that attended on GoToWebinar and on YouTube, thank you for coming. I hope that was helpful for you. If you're on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. It does help quite a bit. So stay healthy, guys. Stay well. And I look forward to seeing you at the next event.